Okay, so in the last video, I showed filling out the database JSON file for the new item that I'm adding to my Spanish corpus in the domain of generative AI. Now I'm going to show creating the JSON file for the contents of that corpus item. I'd like to note here that this code GAI is super important in this naming convention where we have GAI-ESP underscore item 1, item 2, item 3. These naming conventions are super important because later on we're going to pass these files to a Jupyter notebook in order to convert the contents to vector embeddings. And so the Jupyter notebook is set up to look for, we plug in the domain in a config file, and then it's set up to look for files that start with the name of the domain in folders that are named according to the domain. So all of the organization that you're seeing here has been very much thought out, and the organization is really important to the further downstream functioning of the entire system. So you'll want to make sure as you're organizing your files, if you're building a corpus, that they match these organizational structures exactly. And I'll provide information on doing that. For now, let's just add the content file for the current item that we're working on. GAIESP underscore item 003.json. So when I'm starting to build this file, I don't want to fill everything in right away. I just want to build the structure for now, and after that I'll go through and fill things in. But the first thing I want to talk about is the objects and the arrays, the lists that we're seeing within this file. I'll get some word wrap going. So essentially, if I look at a previous example, and this is how JSON files work. JSON files are a series of objects, and sometimes objects are also nested in arrays, and you can have objects nested in objects, et cetera, et cetera. So anytime we have an object, it's going to have an opening curly bracket and a closing. If I go all the way to the bottom, here's the closing curly bracket that closes that item. So that's how I have to start the file. I'll start the file by, in fact, just copying this information. The system's giving me some errors already because it's saying to me, Alaina, you opened up 2 objects and a list, but you didn't close those things. So in order to close things, I just need to have the closing symbol. And now everything's all right because I have, and actually I would like this one. Usually I use like a 2 space indent. So I've got the objects, that's the whole document. Then I have the content. The content is within its own object. So it's an object nested within an object. And then I'm going to have my sections. And the sections, there's going to be multiple sections. So I'm including them in a list, in an array. We say that it's a list, or we tell the system that it's a list or an array by putting square brackets around it. Next, I want to just go and take a look at the document and see what I'm working with here. So I've got an abstract. I'll want to include that in its own section. I've got an introduction, that's section 2. It's a long introduction. Next, I have a section called methodology. That'll be section 3. I have results. That'll be section 4. I'm noting that there's some tables here. So I'm going to have to think about if I want to include these tables, if they include information that's pragmatically important. Maybe I just for now include maybe there's a creative way I can include these if I decide that the information in the tables is important. Then I have the discussions and conclusions. So I actually don't remember how many sections that was. Then I have the references. What's nice about this file is it's actually not that complex. It doesn't have subsections. It doesn't have subsections, so that's going to simplify things for me. But I've got an abstract, so that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 6 sections. So I know I'm going to need 6 objects, 1 for each section. I separate a section with or separate each object. If it's an object in a list and there's another object that follows it, I've got to separate it with a comma. So I'm just creating the objects right now for each of my sections. I just want to create the structure right now rather than the whole fill in everything right away. So 1, 2, 3, 4, I need 2 more. And then if it's the last object in a list, I need to get rid of the comma. So now I need to follow some of the conventions that I've previously been following. And within each object for the section, I'm going to need an ID as my key. The keys are always going to go in quotes and the values are always going to go in quotes. I'm going to have an ID and then I'm going to have paragraphs because there's no subsections. When it comes to the paragraphs, I'm going to have a list of paragraphs, and each paragraph is going to need its own object as well. Okay, so for the first section I had was section 1, and that was the abstract. So the name of the section is abstract. That's the title. And it's got, I need a paragraph afterwards, or excuse me, a comma afterwards, because it's another item in a list here, or it's a key and value pair where there's another key and value pair that follows, so I need a comma. And I'll just check to make sure, am I following the structure? Yep, I am. So then for my paragraph is going to have an ID. The ID is going to be P1_1. That tells me that it's a paragraph. It comes from section 1 and it's the first paragraph in section 1. Then I'm going to go and put text. I'm not going to include a title because there is no title for the paragraph. The section gets the title. And for right now, actually, even though I don't intend on copying all the sections in right now, I just want to create the structure. Because this one's an easy one, there's only one paragraph, I'm just going to go ahead and copy the content in. I need to get rid of some of these bad line breaks because they're causing an error. I'd like to get my word wrap on. I don't know why word wrap just turns off all of a sudden a lot of times. And I hope we see some textual features that are causing issues sometimes. If not, we can, I think nope, it looks okay. I really want to get a clean copy here, as in a clean copy and paste here, because the whole approach that we're having is a corpus-informed approach. This is the corpus item. This is how we're teaching the system what the contents of the document look like. Excuse me. So we'll need to make sure that we're getting a really clean copy and paste each time we include content in. Next, I have section 2. And it's got a title. I'm always including my keys and values in quotes. And what's the title? Let's go get the title. Introduction. And then it's also going to have a list of paragraphs. So I can create my array, my list for paragraphs, and I'll need an object for each paragraph within that list. So let's go take a look at how many paragraphs we have in the introduction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's a really long introduction. So what I'm going to want to do here is, and I don't know why, aha, look at that, I had an error. This needs to be ID. And then we need the comma there. So I think I had 15 paragraphs. So I'm essentially going to need 15 of these where I've got what's the ID for the paragraph and then what's the text. We'll just put a placeholder for text for now. We're in section 2, so I'm going to change that, and then I need 15 of these. Now I've got 5. Why don't I just go and do some basic multiplication, copy the 5 to make 15. I can do some cleanup. I do the cleanup because it helps me to visualize the JSON contents. There's also online tools that we can use if you want to beautify this sort of hierarchical structuring of your JSON file. You can just watch what I can do. I can just copy all of this, head over to like JSON formatter. There's a wide variety of tools like this one online where I'll just go like this. I'll go beautify, and it's going to clean up any issues that I had with spacing. Remember, some of these were pushed ahead. Now it's all cleaned up. So I can just copy this now and just put it back in over here. Okay, so what I do need to do now is I just need to change these numbers, paragraph numbers, because I've got a paragraph for section 2. This one's the first paragraph, this one's the second paragraph, and I need 15 of these. They each need to have their own unique value. So I'm going to just go through and change these. And I had an extra few. Or did I count wrong? 1, 2. I missed 11. I've got 2 10s though. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so I've got section 2 ready. Now I can make section 3. Again, I want an ID. The ID is going to be section underscore 3, comma, title, the title, and then another list of paragraphs with unique items for each paragraph item. We're always working with key and value pairs and objects inside of lists, inside of objects. Okay, so for section 3, this section is called, I think this one is methodology. So I can give my title over here. I like to fill the titles in because later I pass this to generative AI to fill in the actual contents for me. I find that if I give generative AI the structure, it can usually take care of filling it in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11. So actually what I can do up here is, since I've got 11 paragraph objects made here, I'll just copy those in here. They need to get pushed ahead a little bit. Actually, they don't. but I do need to get rid of that and that. And then I can just change it so it's section 3, paragraph 1. Again, we're getting lucky that there's no subsections here. Sometimes papers have subsections. So let's say that section 3 had a subsection 3.1. What would we do in that case? Well, in that case, what we would do is we would create, after this list of paragraphs, we would create a subsections list. That's a list, so it goes into an array, and then I would do ID. The ID would be section underscore 3 underscore 1. That's for section 3.1. And then guess what? I need a title because it's a subsection. And then guess what? It's going to have paragraphs. So I'm going to need my paragraph, another paragraph list. Where then we will have our IDs, one object for each paragraph plus an ID. The ID is going to be paragraph 3.1.1, which means it comes from section 3.1 and it's paragraph 1. If it had another paragraph, it would be section 3.1 paragraph 2, and so on. But the document doesn't actually have subsections, so I don't need this list. Subsections would be the same thing. A list. I did something wrong here. Let's see if I can figure out what it is. It expects a comma somewhere. The ID section, since this would be a subsection of section 3.1, it would be 3.1.1 to start, so it would be section 3.1.1. Title with the title, and then another paragraphs list with another array inside. What do I have wrong here? An object for each paragraph. The ID would be paragraph 3.1.1.1 to denote that this is section 3.1.1 and paragraph 1. And then if I had two paragraphs, it would be the second one would get paragraph number 2. And then we would have the text in there where we're actually including the text. Same here. But then there's something wrong with the structure. Well, here the problem is that I have a list and I didn't close the list. Then the next thing wrong with the structure, I've got the object, I've got the list, I've got an object, this object is okay. This one goes down to here. in line 514, no, line 146. I don't know, I'm really not seeing what's wrong. Okay, I think I found the problem. This subsections needs to go here. Since it needs to come after the paragraphs of section 3.1, then we would have the subsections, so then we have another list. We don't need a comma there, and then we get everything looking fine with no errors. So you can see it can get pretty complex and confusing actually when something goes wrong, but I just went and had to ask Cloud what I did wrong. And it identified it for me because I'm staring at it so long and I can't see what's wrong when I can just go and ask. Okay, so our next section then is going to be section 4. I'm going to leave this in here for now as an example of how subsections and subsections could get processed in the structure, even though we don't actually have those within this file. So we're next going to move on to section 4. And we'll basically do the same thing. We'll move on and do after that section 5. It's the same thing. Just creating lists, creating objects within lists, creating the key values and the keys in the value pairs. This was the references section. Maybe I'll move here. And actually I want to check. This one is going to be title. I don't know that we always need to include the references. I've been trying to create complete, I've been prioritizing creating complete files. And so I have been going through and including the biographical references. I'm not sure that this information is super important to our project at this point. So I'm just going to take that out for now. I'm not going to include the references in this file. And then I'm going to go to the database file and say, as part of my processing note, bibliographic references are not currently included in the content file. That way I know if I ever want to go back and include that, I have a note that reminds me that I need to do that. One interesting feature of this document, as you saw, was all of these tables in the results section. So a way that I might want to deal with that, we've essentially got like a question and then answer pairs where someone is responding to, or a group of people have responded to this survey, and these are the percentages of people who have given each response. So I can get creative about how to include this if I think the information is important enough to include in the document. Maybe I think results comes after resultados, so this is title. And then I'm going to have paragraphs. I'm going to have another list of paragraphs. So I'll do my paragraphs. I want a list. And maybe I'll just consider each one of these things a paragraph or a series of paragraphs where, let's see, how might I do this? I don't need a list inside of a list. I need an object inside of the list. So let's just pretend that this is the first item that appears in this section. So it's the first paragraph. So I'm going to have P4_1 for my ID. And then I want to have the text. And maybe I can just do something like, there's a few solutions. Maybe I just want to copy this into the text. And then I somehow want to copy the answers in as well. Where I could just do something like 6.50 totalmente. In fact, I think that's maybe the best way to do this for now. So I can get the information that I'd like to. It seems like it's important information because it's, a discussion of how people responded to a survey. If the whole premise of the paper is that people were taking this survey, then we would want to capture this information. Another way I could solve this is by listing each of the responses as a separate paragraph. But then suddenly I'm getting a list of paragraph that's like a million miles long because I would need to do 4.2 and the text would be the first response. And then I could have another paragraph for the next response. Property key must be double quoted. So I could take each one of these responses and give it its own paragraph. That might be another way of doing it. In the past, I've done tables as well. I think for now, for the purposes that we're trying to achieve in this specific rendition of the project, it's good enough just to get the answers in with the paragraph here. But then once again, I'll want to go make a note in my processing file that each table was copied into Okay, so I'm going to finish up creating the structure for this file offline because I think you probably get the picture right now. And in the next video, I'll come back and show now how do we go about filling in this. And in fact, maybe we don't even need a video because then the filling in is just essentially either copying, pasting, or in fact, I don't think we even need a next video because maybe the next step is either just filling in the keys. It's just taking and replacing the text with the corresponding paragraph. This is something that I've been doing using a specific project within Cloud. So I'm I'm very careful about renaming my conversations in Cloud as well so that I have a good record. But like this would be an example of where I'm saying, could you help me fill in the JSON structure with the contents from the attached screenshots? It's important that the JSON structure be complete with the information needed. Please disregard any paragraphs that are not a part of section 3. And then what I essentially did was rather than passing Cloud the entire PDF, I go through and save copies of a PDF, or I go through and like separate out. Maybe I'll show it in a video because I think it could be useful to show. All right, see you in the next one.